Gacha games and I don't exactly have an extensive or deep history. I became obsessed with the world of Genshin Impact and its characters in 2020 for about a year before I gave up on it completely. And Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, as embarrassing as it is for me to admit, remains one of my favorite games of all time. Outside of those two games, I don't have a crazy amount of time or experience with gacha games, so imagine my surprise when I was recommended by a friend to play Wuthering Waves when it first released, and I felt captivated by its gameplay. The combat and characters hooked me into the initial hours, however, it wasn't quite enough to recreate the same feeling of addiction that I had with Genshin so long ago. Fast forward to the release of 2.0, and I can say now that this game finally has me by the balls. This is my Wuthering Waves 2.0 review, and how it turned me, a casual player, into a hardcore fan. Since WuWa's 1.0 launch, I only played off and on, not really committing myself to the game. I'd log in, do some quests, explore a little bit, and maybe summon for characters if I liked them or found them to be perfect bait for a Coomer like me. Changli. Going into 2.0, the plan wasn't any different than before, but what I wasn't expecting was that the thing that was different this go around would be the massive jump in quality I felt compared to the initial hours of playing it. The main story was extremely compelling, and I was really driven to finish it in one sitting, which I had to force myself not to do since I really wanted to take my time and appreciated what was being presented to me. Rinasita is massive, gorgeous, and brims with character. Speaking of characters, the characters are also a major reason I was drawn into the game in the first place. The 2.0 cast only further validating my feelings, but we'll talk more about them later. So, what was I greeted with upon logging back in for 2.0? Well, as expected of a major patch, a shit ton of rewards and events that caused me to say to myself, well, guess my existence for the next couple of weeks belonged to Kuro Games. And I was right, because after claiming my login rewards and checking out the current events for the patch, I had to get my hands on the story and prepare myself for what was to come. And oh my god, I have a lot to say about this game, and it might be a glaze fest, but I don't care. Let's get right into it. Starting the 2.0 main quest off, we return to the Black Shores and meet up with Shorekeeper, who informs us she has received an invitation from a member of the Montelli family. The invitation addresses the rover and invites them to Rinasita. After Shorekeeper tells us she won't be accompanying us and giving us a ride in the form of Alto, we set sail for the new region. However, our transport is compromised and we end up being saved by the Captain Brant and his little crew of Echoes. He escorts us safely the remainder of the way to the city of Raguna, where we part ways with the crew for now. Off the bat, I have to admit the pacing in this introduction is much better compared to the intro in 1.0. It's a lot less slow, a lot better paced. We see familiar faces and form a plan of action, giving good reason why they won't be joining us and won't be present in the new story, which leaves plenty of room for the new cast to develop and grow attached to with all that extra screen time. I also felt that this intro moved at just the right speed, faster than 1.0's, but not jarringly fast that it feels unnatural in terms of the writing. After parting with Brant and landing in Raguna, we meet our next character, the only character I have no real attachment to, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but we meet Phoebe, and I do not like this character at all. After we do some sightseeing of the city and take a ride on a gondola, we arrive at the bank to receive our funds, and we meet the hottest, sexiest character. Y'all get the fucking point. It's Zani. She was sent to be our bodyguard and tour guide for our stay. The quality time alone with her is short lived and conflict ensues, leading us to the full open world of Rinasita, and it is gorgeous to say the least. I don't want to spoil the whole story here, but from here we also meet Carlotta, Rochia, as well as a familiar villainess from an earlier point in the story. The main story is quite amazing when compared to the prior main storylines, and I really implore you to play it for yourself. There are a couple points where the writing does drag a little bit, but overall I was thoroughly engaged with it and the characters. Carlotta especially, the chemistry between her and the rover is just immaculate. But those were my thoughts on the story and its characters, but what about Rinasita itself? Rinasita itself is nothing short of breathtaking, with some spots looking straight out of a FromSoft game in terms of the art style. It looks great and feels great to explore, with a new gadget that allows us to frickin' fly. While we can't use this new gadget in other regions, Rinasita is perfectly built to utilize it with new flight challenges and cliffs that allow a big jump to cover massive amounts of distance. There's also a dash option to spend a bit more stamina as a trade-off for additional speed and height. The new map is also chock full of new mobs and bosses, challenges like new tactical holograms, and plenty of side stories and quests to aid in gaining more account XP if that's still needed for you, and also valuable astrites to spend on current or upcoming banners. And while I'm not entirely the type of person that pays attention to side quests and side stories and the such, I will say that Renacita does have a couple in there that are pretty good to actually sit through and pay attention to. There's one about some towers and a few exiles that have a teammate missing. I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say that that was one of the most engaging side quests that I've played in this game so far. I know the bar's not really that high, but still, it's a pretty good quest line, and you get a pretty decent 4-star weapon out of it too for completing it. I will say that Renacita in of itself is as big of a character in this game as the actual playable characters. There's so much personality in this world, and there's so much character in it, environmental storytelling, it's hard to ignore. I can't imagine this game without this area in it anymore because it's just so good. Wuthering Waves combat is also something that's heavily praised amongst the community, especially from people that are recommending others to get into it, because Wuthering Waves does have very good combat. It's very engaging when you're hitting perfect parries and dodges and obliterating enemies in your wake. The only problem that I have with this is sometimes the parry timings can be very finicky. Sometimes I feel like the indicator for parrying will be right when I'm actually hitting them, but I still am not able to get it off because the enemy didn't actually make contact with me yet. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I feel like the parry indicator and the actual animation where you're able to parry don't match up sometimes. And there's also the case of characters having different parry windows since their animations take completely different amounts of times to actually complete. Aside from that, though, combat in this game is very rewarding. It's very fluid and it's very fun. The ecosystem is probably one of the only systems that I'll have any real downsides when I'm talking about this game, because the ecosystem is still pretty good for as far as gear system go. You can infinitely grind echoes so long as you don't kill every single one of them in the overworld, and main stats aren't exactly hard to get. You could get unlucky, but they're not hard to get. And substats would be easy to achieve if it wasn't for the fact that Echo XP is very rare. They're not exactly just giving out a lot, and there's no real farm for them right now. Aside from that, though, I feel like the ecosystem is definitely one of the better gear set systems that I've seen in one of these types of games before, even though the only one I really have it to compare it to is Genshin. The events in WuWa are very varied and are very engaging as well. The most recent one being the co-op challenge event, which I've only done the first couple of stages of with my brother because we need a third person to really get the most efficiency out of our working together. And we do have a third on the way. He's currently making his way through the main story in Huanglong, and even though he is high enough level to do co-op, he hasn't gotten to Renacita, and he hasn't had a lot of chances to build his characters quite yet. But he's getting there. Outside of that, though, the other events being, tactical holograms, the Tower of Adversity. I almost forgot the name of it, but Tower of Adversity. I've completed a few stages of that. I haven't completely gone into it, mainly because I'm waiting until I fully build my characters to really get a good taste of it. But when that happens, I will definitely make an update video, probably. The 2.0 update has consumed my life since its release. What used to be an on-again, off-again situationship has now become the sole focus of my time gaming, and it has convinced me to go out of my way to fully build and even min-max characters to take on the hardest content. It's that good. Characters I'd never consider playing or even grind for are now on my radar, and I'm slowly working one character at a time to get them fully built. It might be a long grind, but every second I spend playing this blast of a AAA disguised as a free gacha game is one more second added to my playtime of one of the most fluid, rewarding, and fun as fuck experiences I have ever had the pleasure of being a part of. Wuthering Waves is quickly becoming one of my favorite games ever, and it's high time I put more time into it and make the shift from casual to committed. It honestly deserves it, and the 2.0 update only proves that. This was my first review and Wuthering Waves video on the channel, hopefully the first of many. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't, and subscribing would go a long way. Thank you for watching. Until next time.